Yeah, so firstly, just want to again thank the Assembly for the invitation to come talk to you all today, and to commend actually all the citizens of the Assembly. You've been given some very difficult topics to discuss, and you give up your own time to be here, so well done to you all. So firstly, I just want to introduce myself and Codema. So I work for Codema, we're Dublin's energy agency. We work with the 4 Dublin local authorities on energy efficiency, increasing renewable energy and reducing carbon emissions in the Dublin region. We're a small office of 14 people, going now since 1997. So over the last 20 years, we've been working on different projects to help the local authorities combat climate change from a bottom-up approach. And I've been asked today to introduce some of the projects that we're currently working on, to give you some examples of what's happening on the ground. And just to frame these local projects within the bigger picture, so we heard from Brian and Marie this morning about the national level energy policy and how our carbon emissions on a national level are being affected by those policies. So we have policies which support renewable energy like wind. We have policies that support reductions in energy in our new buildings, and other policies which affect change from very much a kind of a top-down approach. So it's very high-level stuff which doesn't really affect people on the ground too much. We don't really think about where our energy comes from. And these kind of initiatives, these kind of policies are driven mainly by European directives, European regulation, and it all comes very top-down. Whereas the local level energy projects, that, like you've heard from Paul and Neil, and the Codema projects, these are very much local level energy projects which are driven by local energy champions like Neil, like the energy agencies, like Tipperary and ourselves, and the other energy agencies out there. These kind of local groups, community groups and individuals are driving change from a bottom-up approach through things like community energy cooperatives, the bike schemes, the Dublin bike schemes, the Cork City bike schemes, those kind of initiatives on the ground. District heating systems, they're very much local level projects. There's a great example down in Tralee, which heats a lot of homes and public buildings there with 100% renewable energy from local biomass resources. And again, you've heard a lot about the solar energy, and a lot of projects going on with large installations of solar on big industries and public buildings. But where this top-down, when a lot of things are happening from a top-down approach, and there is a lot of things happening on the ground, we still have this massive gap to our targets. So as you've heard this morning, from Marie, we're really lagging behind in terms of meeting our energy targets and meeting our CO2 emission targets. But there is a way, and it was hit on this morning, it's trying to integrate and combine these national level, this national level approach and local level initiatives together into an overall smart energy system. And you'll be sick of hearing about Denmark now over the course of all this talking about climate change, but this is how the Danes approach it. This is the kind of, we'd have to look at all the 3 sectors together. So at the moment we look at electricity, we look at heat, and we look at transport, and they're very much looked at in kind of individual silos. So we have policies that support all 3, but not really how they can benefit each other. So electricity is very much dealt with at a national level. We have a lot of national level policies which kind of influence where our electricity comes from. Whereas heat and transport are very much local level issues. When you left your house today, you had to think about, what do I have available locally? Do I have a Lewis system? Do I have a bus to get here? Do I have a bike system? Is there cycling lanes? These are all local level issues. And the same with heat. When you're thinking about changing your oil or gas boiler, is there a gas grid in your area? Where is there a local supply of biomass or wood fuel for to change your heating system? So when we combine these local level problems and with the national level and the electricity sector, we can start to look to ways to really take advantage of all the resources that we have. We heard this morning, we have huge resources available. We have a lot of wind, and and we have biomass available as well. So if we use the likes of district heating systems, heat pumps, to use this electricity at times when we have too much renewable electricity on the grid, this helps not only the heating sector to reduce its carbon emissions, but also to integrate more renewables onto the electricity grid. And the same with transport. We can use the likes of EVs to charge up and store energy in battery systems that would help to increase the amount of renewable energy on our grid. And then importantly as well, it's balancing the use of biomass and biofuels. At the moment, we have resources in biomass and biofuels, but we're a small island, So these resources are limited and very valuable in terms of the energy transition. So we need to look at where is best to use these resources and find a balance between the heat and transport sectors. So now I'll just show you some examples of on-the-ground actions that Codeema are carrying out in conjunction with the Dublin local authorities. So the first one I want to talk about is the Dublin Climate Change Action Plans. So these action plans will be the first regional climate change mitigation and adaptation action plans in Ireland. And this is something the local authorities feel passionate about, and we're helping them to create this. And they don't just to highlight, they don't have to do this. They're not obliged to do this. This is not something the local authorities have to do. This is something they want to do to drive change from a bottom-up approach. So as you can see, energy plays a key role in the action plans, but also there are other sectors, very much like what Neil showed there. There are other parts of an action plan like this which influence both adaptation and mitigation to climate change. So other areas the local authorities work in will be planning, transport, water, waste, biodiversity, and most importantly, citizen and stakeholder engagement, which overarches the whole plan. So the local authorities have committed to transform Dublin into a CO2 neutral and climate resilient region, and the mission they have set out is to lead Dublin in the regional response to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So all 4 Dublin local authorities have signed up to work together, and they've actually committed to over 40% carbon reductions by 2030, which is in line with European targets and well above our national targets. So they're really trying to be ambitious and drive change. Another example of something that's happening on the ground, projects that are happening on the ground. So these are the home energy saving kits. These were developed by Codeema through a European project called ACE. And these were developed basically, there's 6 tools in there that helps homeowners to go home and help them to understand exactly what's happening in their home, how they're using energy, and how they can impact their carbon emissions. The toolkits were first piloted and have become very successful, now have support from the SEAI, and just this year in 2017 were awarded with a European award at the Sustainable Energy Week for the best consumer energy initiative in Europe. So this has been very successful so far, and it has been rolled out now in 21 libraries across the Dublin city area. There's 67 toolkits that have already been used in over 600 homes to help them understand their energy use. And I'll do a Blue Peter now. And this is one we made earlier. So if anyone wants to have a look at it later on, you can come up and have a look, no problem. So another area then which affects the way we use energy in buildings now. So we, as Marie spoke about earlier, we have a big problem with energy in our existing buildings. While we have regulation that affects new buildings, it's really difficult to affect large-scale changes in our existing buildings. So we are working on something called energy performance contracting with the local authorities. And this basically takes groups of buildings together, we get an energy service company to come in, and they guarantee energy savings over a set period of time. And these savings then basically pay for the retrofitting themselves. So it's a win-win situation for the local authorities, and we've had support now from 2 European projects to implement this with the local authorities in Dublin. So the first project, the first local authority EPC project was with Dublin City Council, and they managed to contract energy savings of 2.6 gigawatt hours. And just to put in that in relative terms, that's enough to power over 130 households in a year. So that's just with 3 of their leisure centres. So we're now going to roll that out in a lot more of their buildings and work with the other local authorities to do similar projects. And a big part of our work now is district heating. And I explained a bit in my paper, so I won't go into too much detail, but district heating is basically a way that we can transport heat, low carbon, low cost heat in insulated hot water pipes from sources of waste energy into our homes, into our buildings, just like this. And the first way to show where district heating will be suitable is to map the heat demand. And so we've learned from our European counterparts, again in Denmark and Scandinavia, where district heating is widely used. It's not used in Ireland too much, but it's really common in other countries. For example, in Copenhagen and Stockholm, over 90% of their buildings will be connected to district heating systems. So we've mapped the whole Dublin region. So it's the first time we've looked at energy at a local level like this, and to see where district heating might be feasible. And without going into too much technical detail, basically any of the areas you see here in this map that will be orange or red will be deemed very suitable for district heating. And that's over 75% of Dublin City that covers. So this is an ideal region to start implementing district heating. And when we looked at typical sources of heat, where would we get this heat from? We actually found that there's actually enough waste heat at the moment in the Dublin region to heat over 40% of our buildings. And that heat at the moment is being dumped into our seas, into our rivers and into air. So anytime you see an industry with a big chimney with steam coming out of it, that's heat that's being wasted. And instead, we're importing oil and gas, whereas we could be using this resource, this low carbon, low cost resource, to meet our heating needs. As Marie said, is a huge part of our energy needs is in heat. So we have 2 projects already underway. We're working with Dublin City Council using the waste heat from a large power plant in the Docklands area, and there's pipes already going in the ground there. And in South Dublin County Council have committed to implementing the first phase of a district heating system in the Tallaght Town Centre, using their own buildings as the base of the heat demand. And we've secured over $500,000, again, of European funding to help them to implement that. But we have a lot of European support. We have European projects that will support this work, but we've no national level energy policy support at the moment for district heating. There's no regulations, there's no legislation, and there's no policies that will support district heating. And in fact, some of the policies that are in there at the moment are actually detrimental to implementing district heating. So we really need national level support for this. And just to finish up, our main point from Kadima would be just to support more of these local level initiatives, more resource for these kind of initiatives, so we can start to affect change from a bottom-up approach and engage citizens in the transition. But this will require long-term planning and very tough decisions to be made on a national level. Thank you.